Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 194th edition of the Frank and Stan chat. I always say Frank and Stan because we're told regularly that when that comes up on the little sort of interpretation thing, the little stream of words at the bottom, it comes up as Frankenstein. So, anyway, it's the Frank and Stan chat. And those of you watching on video will notice that we have a colleague, Jill Gray, with us. Hello, Jill.
Hi, good
Hi, Joe.
morning.
Yeah,
Hi, good morning to
we'll
both of
come
you.
round and find out who Jill Gray is and how does Frank and Stan know Jill Gray. But we'll first of all go to Stan. How are you feeling this morning, Stan?
Good, I think. I've not been up that long. It's been a bit of a lie-in today. Although we have picked up Isaac and we've got him all morning, so that might be a challenge later on.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we can keep the this chat going for a few hours if that would be helpful,
Yeah,
Stan. But anyway,
Is it your grandson, Stan?
he is, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
lovely.
two. Just
Oh,
turned two.
lovely.
yeah. Go on, Stan. A little quickly summarize the story around Isaac.
Um, um, my son and daughter-in-law couldn't have children, went through the adoption process, a horrendous process, I have to say. I think they went through it for 2 years, and then was persuaded by the social worker to go for a foster to adopt, which meant they had no guarantee really that the child would become theirs anyway. It worked out. So from about 4 weeks old, he's been part of the family. So
Oh,
it's
lovely.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, enriching, aren't the children in your life when you get older?
fantastic.
They are.
Most of the time, isn't it, Stan?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Most of the time.
It's just little things like we playing in the sand and water in our garden, and he's two, and he said, "I'm making thick, oozy mud
Oh,
that's come from the bear hunt." But the
Yeah,
fact that he'd connected those things up was
yeah,
just amazed how quickly his language is developing.
yeah.
yeah.
And you miss it all as a parent. I think I don't remember having those kind of insights to my own children.
I agree. I've got four grandchildren, and you can really step back and look at through a different lens, can't you? It's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
really,
think I
really.
was too tired as a parent. That was the thing. The lack of sleep. That was the thing that was so
Yeah, yeah,
devastating for me.
yeah.
Um, anyway, Jill, thank you for joining us. Do you want to just
Welcome.
explain who you are and what you're currently doing? Because you're involved in some
Yeah.
quite interesting work at the moment, aren't you?
I am, yeah. So I'm the former principal of Blackpool 6. I did that role for 9 years. Absolutely loved it. I moved there from Runshaw College. I was at Runshaw College for 20 years. Started out as a part-time hospitality teacher. Hospitality is my background, and just worked my way up to deputy principal at Runshaw, and then moved to Blackpool 6. And obviously, Frank, we got to know each other through my work with Blackpool. We're at the moment, I retired as the principal in February, and I'm helping set up a new multi academy trust involving the college, two secondary schools, and two alternative provision providers. So it's really exciting for us, a totally different type of role than what I've been used to doing, but really exciting. I'm enjoying it. So at some point in the future, I will retire, but I'm not quite sure when at the moment.
Well, I think Stan and I can say something about that. I don't think
Yeah,
it's
You
ever going
never
to happen.
retire, let me
No,
tell you. You
no.
never do.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the name of the trust?
So the trust is going to be called the Coastal Collaborative Trust. We did have it as a Horizon Learning Trust, but decided that probably wasn't the best name. So we've got Coastal Collaborative Trust, and it's great, and because it is very much a collaborative venture that we're doing, working together. And obviously, I've had a lot of connections with schools through my work as principal, but less so with the AP providers, to be fair. So that's
Mm,
quite an interesting focus for me. But helping set the business side up more, really, at the moment, rather
yeah.
than the education side. That will come once we've got the main structures in place. So yeah, very exciting. It's
Yeah.
surprising when you do things like this that you remember how much you actually know. I think sometimes it can get lost, and then you can call on a lot of experience. I've been doing education for 30 years, and it's surprising how little things you've done over the years come back, don't they, when
They
you're
do.
doing a
Yeah.
new project.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, in terms of challenge, then, what's been the greatest challenge in terms of this venture?
Um, to be fair, I've not really found any challenge.
Okay.
I tell you what's been the biggest challenge, and this is a really bizarre thing, but at the college we used Google on everything, and here we use Microsoft.
Microsoft, yeah.
Actually, that's been the biggest challenge, working across two different systems, because I'm still an employee of Blackpool 6, but paid on behalf of the trust until we all TUPE over. So at the moment, I've got two operating systems, which, I'm not the best with IT. So that's probably been the biggest challenge. The rest has been an opportunity. I'm not very good on challenge, Frank. I'm more of an opportunity, seeing
Oh, right.
opportunity.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, you are
yeah,
a very positive person in
yeah,
that
it's the
way.
opportunities. I've loved going into the schools and, like when we've been looking at a finance system, bringing all the finance people together and, saying, right, what do we want? What do we want out of a new finance system? It's quite exciting, really. And I mean, I get excited probably more than the specialists in finance. So, yeah, it's been good. It's not been a challenge in that. It was quite a challenge giving up the college, if I'm honest, and to look at this trust as a trust and not from the college's eyes, which is always a challenge, isn't it, when you move into any new job? But no, it's exciting.
Yeah, it's interesting. We did a recording with a guy called Tom Zebedee this week, and he's into cyber security and things like that. And I spoke to Tom about some of the challenges I had when the Carp Academy's trust was growing and the difficulties of bringing schools in from, say, Stoke and from Bradford with different operating systems, and how it was important to sort of commit to a single system, even though it was challenging for some of the schools. It was impossible to run the system any other way. But of course, a lot of schools didn't want the change. They wanted to stick with what they were used to. But I'm glad we eventually made the change. It was necessary.
I think
Anyway,
the beauty of doing things like this, so as you can, part of setting up a trust is around culture and winning hearts and minds and being able to look at things and not being top down and say, this is the finance system we're having. It's actually, we've been working together and saying, right, what do we want out of it? So when we made the decision of who to go with, everybody was really happy because we'd ironed out everything. And, I'm very much around culture and bringing people with you along the way. So it's worked really well.
yeah, great. I mean, in some ways, that leads neatly, doesn't it, really, in the sense of trying to engage with people with what's caught your eye this week, Stan?
Yeah, what's caught my eyes is a very short clip from Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart's podcast where they talk to Bridget Phillison about the curriculum. And the first thing she said, she wanted a review of the curriculum. And I think that seems to be in all departments, doesn't it? In the current government, we'll review everything and see where we are, which I think is quite a reasonable thing to do before you set off. But she then went on to say there were real issues, she thought, around creativity in state schools and a lack of access for state pupils to music, art, and drama, which for me is fantastic. It's something I really believe in. But then I had a conflict of interest when I thought, why is a political person making those decisions about potentially a national curriculum for schools without schools being engaged in that conversation? And I hope it happens, but I would like it to happen through some different process
Hmm.
where schools have the genuine opportunity to say, this is what we think our curriculum's missing, and this is why, in my view, why we're disenfranchising a number of pupils, a significant number in my view, and then wondering why they don't want to come to school because we're not offering them the things that they are good at. Read something like Ken Robinson and The Element and things, finding what a child is really good at used to be, when I first started teaching, a key thing. Find their strength and then use that strength to develop the other subjects that they're not so good at, but lift their self-esteem by showing them how good they are at art or fantastic at drama or a musician, and help that strength flood out some of the other weaknesses. But we seem to have gone down a road where unless you can be good at maths and English, you're a failure and you don't get opportunities to do those art subjects. And of course, the baccalaureate didn't recognise them at all.
No.
So,
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's that hooking them in, isn't it? I mean, I said before, my background's hospitality, and the skills that I have learned through hospitality, not necessarily the knowledge, but the skills of people and things. And then you learn the importance of maths and English through it, because as you're going through it, you need maths and English to be successful. But, you know, I've always said to the students that my hospitality background has made me the leader I am today, being able to work with people, you know, all the different sort of personal attributes I've gained through working in hospitality in my earlier years have been absolutely critical for my success, really. And, you know, one of my very good friends, she was the head of hospitality at the college I used to work at. And, you know, she worked with some really challenging students, but she had this amazing talent of hooking them in and getting them, you know, and they've gone on to be Michelin star chefs, you know, and they've had to use maths and English, and some of them have gone on to work abroad, and, you know, but it's hooking them in at that early age, isn't it? And I think you're right, Stan, the curriculum is too rigid and it's too narrow for too many students, you know.
Yeah, we were talking yesterday. I'm still doing work for the Northern Powers Partnership. We had a sort of team meeting in Leeds yesterday, and we were just a couple of the colleagues have spoken to a further education principal in the Northeast, and was feeding back on what this colleague had said. And I think there was this sort of the impact of resitting. I don't think it was a big problem for Blackpool 6, but it probably is for Blackpool and Fire College and for other similar sort of colleges about the restriction of the curriculum for those who haven't got their what I don't even like calling it a pass, but they haven't got the grade 4 in maths and English. And actually, the fact that that narrows options even more at a point when actually you've got children who have struggled to reach that, you want to sort of widen it. You know, is there something here that we can draw you into? You know, the colleague was saying something I was aware of, but I think just he actually put it down to pounds and pence and the cost of it and whatever. It was so detrimental. You know, and we were talking about just having a proficiency assessment for those young people who perhaps don't reach that grade would be helpful, you know, because some of the stuff that they're going to need, for example, in hospitality, you know, some of that focuses in on just part of the maths curriculum, for example, not all of it, but just part of it.
I can't remember I've ever used pie in my, you know,
other than to serve it.
Yeah, well, serving a pie. Yeah, exactly. But you're absolutely right. I think as well, you know, students come to college and come to Blackpool 6 and resit, and of course they've got this belief they can't do maths or they can't do English.
Yeah.
And then they don't attend as well those subjects. Then you're on their back because they're not attending and they're not going to pass. Then they don't become as happy with their other subjects because college then becomes a bit, and you can just see this downward spiral, you know. And I think, you know, I know we've gone through over the years key skills, core maths, functional skills. We've gone through the lot, haven't we? But I do think that some kind of functional maths and English is a good thing for so many people. The qualifications we've had might not have been suitable, but there's got to be something, because there's people working out in industry in these jobs who might not have got GCSE maths or GCSE English, but they're highly successful at what they do.
Yeah. Well, I've said before, I didn't get my maths O level. And well, you might say it has stopped me, but it hasn't prevented me from developing a career, you know. But also, I think what I think is interesting, we've done this in the Northern Powers Partnership, is shared with colleagues what the maths GCSE paper looks like. And they are shocked at, you know, depending on who it is and what their sort of priorities are for their business, there's a definite feeling of, oh, you know, this is okay. And others who think, well, why are we doing all that with them? You know, this element of stuff that they're spending time on, they understand. They realise that a colleague will not require a lot of that.
Yeah, we went on holiday about 2 years ago, all my family. So we're quite a big family when we all get together. There's about 20 of us. And we all got together one night and we had a quiz. And my son, who's a teacher, primary school teacher, he was year 6 teacher at the time. He said, I'm doing a quiz. We did 2 quizzes, but he said, I'm going to do one. And this one is set on the work that my year 6 kids are doing.
Yeah.
honestly, at one point, I think everybody was going to down tools and walk away from this quiz because it was like, what? Why can't you just ask us? But it really showed up, I think, the level of what they're doing in schools.
Yes.
But actually, where do they lose that knowledge and that skill that they can do in primary school by the time they get that older and, ready,
I,
work ready?
yeah, I think
What the frontal adverbial in this sentence?
I do think though that when they get to secondary school, I think there are workarounds in primary and for primary school teachers who are predominantly sort of masters of all subjects, or mistresses of all subjects. But the thing is that I think in secondary, where secondary school math specialist starts to use language which is very specific and very sort of maths based, rather than the sort of casual language, I think that starts to confuse children. Now, I'm not sure whether which is right. I suspect the secondary school approach is the right approach, but actually, I do feel as though, from personal experience, that's where some of it seems to be lost. And also, I think the fact that yeah, just I'm experiencing this in the family at the moment. Just in year 7 and year 8, there's just too many in some of the schools. Too many supply teachers. Too many supply teachers. I mean, you just don't have that consistency, which you get in
That is a
primary
challenge
school.
for us anyway, isn't it, in the sector at the moment?
Yeah,
Because,
yeah,
you need somebody in front of them, but we know that sometimes the quality is not always good, or it's just changing all the
all the
time.
time. Yeah,
You're not building a relationship, and actually, a lot of children can only thrive when they feel a connection with their teacher.
Yeah.
And the best, if you speak to people about their happy memories about being at school, it's very much about individual teachers. So if you're constantly getting a change in teacher, you're not going to thrive, are you?
No, Dave Milne was me. He was only 18. He'd just done his A levels and spent a year teaching at our school history. Before he went off to university, he just wanted to see whether he could do it, and he was amazing. And he changed my attitude to learning completely. Do you have anybody like that, Stan?
Fortunately, right at the very beginning, a lady called Mrs. Lathwaite. So when I was 4, going on 5, I was multiplying and adding fractions.
Wow.
We're talking now in the very early 60s, and she bought Cuisenaire rods for every child to be able to use for just an amazing woman, way before her time.
Yeah. So what happened after that, Stan?
Well, I soon realised that when you were identified as the brighter child, you got more work. So I quickly realised that wasn't the way to be.
Neil, have you got somebody that you can recall?
No, I don't think I have really. I think the one person probably stood, but it was my woodwork teacher of all things.
Oh,
But
right.
just because he was kind and he listened, you know what I mean? He was just, I think, interested in me, and that was nice. Sadly, no longer on with us, but I think that was really nice. Interestingly, I didn't really get on with my domestic science
Oh,
teacher.
really?
Yeah, I went on to do hospitality, so that doesn't my thoughts there doesn't quite work out. Just thinking though as well, a lot of it, as we know, is what you get at home, isn't it, as well?
Yeah.
And what you get at home. While I've just come back from Australia, and while I was there, my eldest granddaughter's really bright girl. She's 9, and my son's a teacher, and his wife is really clever lady, and it's just the way they talk to her. So she was doing something in the kitchen, and she's a bit scatty as my eldest granddaughter, and she was trying to make something, and it didn't work out. And where I would have just said, you maybe just need to think about how you went about doing it. My daughter-in-law said, "Now I think you need to go back to your hypotheses and I thought, if you're talking that kind of language, and I just saw things all the time. But and you've got people who love education, and my son and my daughter-in-law do. Then actually the children's experience as they're growing up is education all the time in everything they do. They're always finding ways of educating them, but in a very subtle way, and that's really nice to see.
So this is sorry, Sam, just move
I
on.
was just say, going back to that bit about drama, I just want to mention a PE specialist when I was working in Lancashire, who I used to think I could do anything in PE. I could take a PE lesson. And when you talk to somebody who's a specialist
Yeah.
and you realize your knowledge is nowhere near what it should be. But he said about drama and when schools were cutting the amount of drama they were doing and increasing the amount of literacy, his phrase was, how can a child know the difference between creeping and crawling unless they've done both of them?
Mm.
I think it's that bit about what's the experience the child's had in order to be able to use that language.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So Jill, you've been out in Australia.
I have. I've had three. So my son and his wife and my three grandchildren emigrated in October. So I went out at Christmas to see them. I owe a lot to them really because I'm a bit of a home bird and I don't think I would have ever gone to Australia
Oh,
at
right.
all. So I went at Christmas, and then just the other week I took my mum and dad because they're just in their 80s, and I wanted them to experience it. So we had a bit more. We went to Singapore, we went to Brisbane, we went on the Sunshine Coast where my son is. We all went to Sydney. Then on the way back, we went to Perth, back to Singapore and home. So I've had a lovely travel
Wow.
while I've been out there. And so it's been great. Yeah, it's been really nice.
But your son and his wife are doing something different though now, aren't
Yeah,
they?
so they went out. My son went out as a teacher. He got a job in a private school there. He did that for about 4 months, but then they just took the decision, quite a radical decision, really, to take the children out of school, to give backward on the house that they were renting, buy a caravan, and set off and tour Australia. So that's what they're currently doing. Sean, my son, has never towed a caravan in his life. Now, they've stayed in caravans occasionally, I think, but they've never done. Obviously, they've gone from having quite a lovely house that they were renting, quite a lot of space, into a caravan with three small children. We've got 9, 7, and 2. So,
Gosh.
and Sean's going to do supply work at schools, but he's going to try and get to a place and then maybe stay there and get some work for a few weeks.
Right.
And they're going to educate the children as they go along. But one thing that struck me, one thing that's caught my eye this week was the resilience that family have got at the moment. Because when we left them in Sydney, they'd got a week to get home and pack everything up out of the house, get a storage unit, pack it away, get the caravan set up, which in itself just made me feel like, oh my God, how are you going to manage that? But then my grandson in Sydney was coughing a lot. And when they got back, they took him to the doctors, and he's got whooping cough, and they'd all got the virus as well. So they've
Oh,
all been on
wow.
strong antibiotics. So resilience, I mean, my goodness. And, I sort of said, are you going to put your plans back? And they said, no, we're going to just crack on and do it, and it just struck me, how resilient they all are.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because if he's looking for a job in the future, you wouldn't immediately think about bringing that issue up. If it was another teaching job or whatever, you'd be talking about, well, I've taught this year group and I've done this and whatever. But actually, that says an awful lot about him and his attitude towards learning and life in general. I think I'd be quite impressed if I heard that on an interview as an
Yeah, and
answer.
he's also going to set up his own teaching online. So he's going to try and do some teaching online as well. But like I said, they're so good. We went out when I went at Christmas, we went out for a meal and in the afternoon. And Sean said to my eldest granddaughter, Silver, he said, right, he said, we're going out this afternoon. He said, do you know where we're going, which restaurant we're going to? I want you to go and write me an advert for the restaurant. I want you to design me one and think about your language and think about, the descriptive language to entice people, And I just thought straight away. And then George got something to do with the menu and costing the menu, And so it was all fun. We were going out, but yeah, they were doing something along the way. But
It's
you've got
all applied
parents.
stuff, though, wasn't
It
it? It's
is.
all applied
Have
stuff.
parents who were excited about it and
Yeah,
interested in it.
yeah. I mean, I mentioned before that I was in Leeds yesterday, and just telling the story of how the applied aspect of learning is so important. In that, I told the story, which I have mentioned here before, about young people. I went to a cafe locally, and the owner wasn't there, and the card system broke down. So I was trying to pay £18.92 but I only had a £20 note. And the couple of young students, they're probably only 16, couldn't work out how to give the cash. Now, I understand that, but actually, I think they were probably, if I got behind the till and showed them. Honestly, I was very honest about it. It was £1. Was it £1.18 or something
Yeah,
change?
can I just say, there's only Frank in the world who would do that for £1 something.
But it
Most
just
people would have said, just take the 20.
I know, but it's a bit like for me, I found languages very difficult. But actually, I think if I actually had to embrace it, as a young person, I never went to, we studied French, but I never went to France until I was sort of like 20, no, 32. But actually, I think if I actually had to embrace it and actually apply it, I think I would have probably taken to it because I can get by now.
Yeah.
And it always frustrates me that the learning always is in isolation, and a lot of the stuff that young people grab onto is the stuff that actually just means I can do that job better. If I can do this, I can do it better. So that's the encouragement to want to do it better. Not because Mr. Smith or Mrs. Jones has told me I've got to do this to pass my exam. This is actually really helpful.
The thing is, though, as well, is unfortunately technology, although, I think technology is amazing. If you go into a coffee shop now and you buy coffee, everything's tilled in. And,
Yeah.
if it's £5.92 and you say, I've got a £10 and I've got the 92, and they look at you like, well, what? What do I do?
Things
I
start
don't know how
sparking. You
to
can
do
see
the
it.
difference, And if you go in, I'm sorry, all my examples are hospitality, but if you go
No.
into a restaurant now, you used to have to write the order down. You had to be able to make it clear so that the chef could see what you were asking. Now it's all done on a tablet. It goes through. So actually, unfortunately, through the advancements of technology, we're de-skilling a lot of people. And that's a bit of a worry. So we were talking the other day about students having a real good knowledge of IT, but actually got a really good knowledge of how to use an iPhone and social media, but being able to use a mouse and a keyboard and everything else, they're not good at because they're
No.
not used to using them. So yeah, I'm a bit mixed, probably a bit old for technology, but I can see so many advantages, but I can also see where we are de-skilling or de-skilling people in lots of different ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I used to take my children in the car when they were younger, and because of maths and English, we used to have this game. I'd say to them, right, so we're driving along. I'm coming to your shop now, and I'm going to buy 3 apples, and each apple is 20p, and I'm going to buy a pie at this, and how much is it going to be? And we used to have a bit of a game. They used to love it, but again, it's just that constant
Yes,
basic maths and English, really, isn't it?
it is. Yeah. Um, yeah. Yeah. I'll ask this question at the end, but what caught my eye this week? Obviously, I've been responsible, along with Professor Colin Richards, for the Alternative Big Listen, and that went live. Well, it was late last night when I uploaded it all, but really struck by some of the outcomes. Absolutely dreadful. Sort of, was it 90-odd%? I think Ofsted's not fit for purpose and all this sort of stuff. But the key thing for me is that we were really fortunate to be able to not employ, because we're not paid anybody anything for this. So, but we reached out to a guy called Dave Smith, who was the former press officer for the Co-op Group, and he'd been that for about 40 years. And I'd actually attended, I think it's 3 retirement dues for Dave at the Co-op, where he retired, and then they asked him to come back again, and then but anyway, we reached out to Dave, and the sort of insight that he can bring to how you effectively communicate a story, I think is really, really interesting. And where you talk about a 500-word press statement, you've really got to think very carefully about what your messaging is, and actually, is that word actually necessary? Is that phrase necessary? And I think it's all that sort of challenge as well, in terms of him feeling able to come back to us and say this isn't really good enough, and at the end of the day, being humble enough to say, well, Dave, I think you know what you're doing. I'm not, I thought I was quite good at writing a press statement, but I'm probably not now, and I really need to learn from you. So I think it was just a reach out to Dave Smith, who has been amazing over the last couple of weeks for us. And I think we're on the independent website. We've got reach, and on the Guardian website. So it's really, he's really done a great job for us. So I'm really grateful for that. And I hope it brings about change. Today, Reading Council are going to issue an external review of the events around Ruth Perry's death. And some of it, isn't very good reading, neither for government, Ofsted, or other stuff around, stuff that we have covered about, one or two word judgments and the whole issue around the toxicity of the national sort of infrastructure around accountability. It's just not fit for purpose at the moment. So we hope it makes a difference. But yeah, if you want something doing, it's probably a good idea to go and speak to somebody who's been doing it for 40 years.
Isn't that interesting, Frank? That's apparently, or what appears to be happening now with the government. I'm thinking of a guy we've spoken about before with the prisons, and the statement. This is Timpson, that in his view, somebody who's worked with prisons for a long time and prisoners, that a third of those people really shouldn't be there, and the fact that it came out last night, I think, or the night before, that was a view also held in conservative circles, but not one that the then Prime Minister was prepared to do anything about for fear of losing votes. And I think, if there's ever a time to do something radical, it's right after you've been elected, isn't it? Right after you've been appointed as a head teacher.
Yeah.
While the going's still good and you've still got a lot of support. But it just made me think that if we have people who know what they're doing and have experience and use their advice, then we're going to steer things a little bit better than they have been in the past.
Yeah.
I refer to Michael Gove and being rather sick of experts, because he knew instinctively, he said at one point, when he stopped the teacher training programs and said he wanted it all done through schools, he knew intuitively that was the right thing to do. So despite the evidence.
Well, one thing that's just struck me there, Frank, when you were saying about, having a bit of humility, I think when through leadership, one thing I'm always talking about when I do talk to new leaders is to have a bit of humility and don't think you have to know everything. I think there's this fear with a lot of people when they get a promotion that suddenly they've been catapulted to a new position and they have to be the expert. And, I said, you'll get more respect admitting it. Obviously, you can't say I don't know anything, because then people start doubting whether you're the right person for the job. But actually a bit of humility does go a long way, doesn't it? And recognizing that you're not the expert in everything and that you're open to learning all the time.
I used to say, as a head teacher, walk the school with your caretaker and find out how much they know that you don't about the school building, how it works and everything else.
Absolutely.
Well, that's where nearly 40 minutes goes on a Friday morning. Thank you so much, Jill, for joining us.
You're very welcome. It's been lovely. It's felt like a nice little chat. It's been lovely.
Well, I'm really pleased. That's what a lot of people say. So it's really good to hear that. And we are back next week for the final Frank and Stan chat of this academic year. And it's with somebody who's been on a few times before, Emma Ainsworth. And also, just a shout out for the future. We are booked up every week from the beginning of September to the week before Christmas with guests on this. And also, I think we're nearly booked up to the end of February. So for next year. So as long as Stan and Frank's hearts keep beating, we will be here on a Friday morning. And I have to say, we don't do it for viewing figures, but it is nice when the number of people watching and listening increases. But I have to say, we hit a very low point last week because we didn't have a guest, Jill, and our viewing figures were the lowest of the year.
Oh no.
Yeah, so
Oh, no. Well,
the humility of it all, that we rest, our success rests on the quality of our guests. I think we realize that. So anyway,
well, I
thank
hope
you,
they don't
everyone.
dip this week. Sorry if they do. Apologies.
No, 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 no. Well, we have set a very low bar, Jill. There's no, you are definitely going to exceed that. But anyway, thank you so much, Jill, for joining us, and we'll see you
Very
all
well.
being well next week. Thank you, Stan. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye
Thanks
bye.
a lot. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.